Welcome to this first Womanship Share More, Worry Less Truthcast. My name is Nicolette Lazarus. I'm a very proud auntie to my niece and 4 nephews and was there with my mum at the birth of my sister's first child. Whilst we were watching the delivery, my mum said that she didn't remember giving birth to be so brutal. I thought, wow, time must indeed be a great healer, and also reminded her that last time she'd been up the other end. Needless to say, my sister banned me from subsequent births because my mum and I giggled like schoolgirls throughout the whole thing. Looking back, I guess it wasn't that helpful to my wonderful baby sister. Although I was not blessed with a child, through personal experiences and the experiences of my family and friends, I'm aware that many women face worries, not only in terms of getting pregnant, but through their entire pregnancy and motherhood journey. But with pregnancy and birth being a relatively normal thing, how come in today's society, 50% of pregnant women fear childbirth and 40% experience birth trauma? So this first Share More, Worry Less Truthcast is about the pregnancy and birth journey. Even though I only ever experienced a small part of this due to multiple miscarriages, I'm a passionate believer that through periods, pregnancy, and menopause alone, there's more that bind us together women globally than separate us. And that it's only by coming together in support of each other as women, despite our individual experiences, we can achieve the equity we deserve. Because I believe our collective female energy can change this world for the better. So when the wonderful Kasia from Mamamoon contacted me to help raise awareness for the crowdfunding project for her wonderful Mamamoon app, it seemed the perfect way to give birth to Womanship Truthcasts. Kasia is a prenatal yoga teacher and hypnobirthing childbirth educator through her company's 7th series, and of course, a founder of Mamamoon, a startup that improves women's experiences during pregnancy, birth, and postpartum by digitizing access to the relevant knowledge and experts. Welcome, Kasia. I really appreciate you joining today for this chat.
Thank you so much. Thank you for giving me a chance. Thank you for welcoming me so warmly. So absolutely grateful for being here.
So I'd love to start by you introducing yourself.
I say it's a mix. It's a mix of experiences. I'm originally from Poland, where I grew up, where I finished all my education as well. Somewhere in the middle, I landed in Amsterdam through coming through different countries before, Singapore, Ireland, Belgium as well. I found my home here, worked in corporate first for over 12 years in different functions. And the one that stayed the closest to me was in digital health, where we were working on improving people's life by minimizing the risks through improving the lifestyle behaviors. And when my daughter was born, life changed in many ways. And that also shaped me. I was already at that time following my yoga journey. So I was already teaching yoga. I got my daughter, finished my teacher training, was shocked how beautiful her birth was, despite everything I was dreading before. So started diving deeper into prenatal yoga, hypnobirthing. When my son was born, I quit corporate. And when 180 degrees opposite, so really going into sharing what helped me throughout my journey. So what helped me throughout pregnancy, the first weeks after, and also the early parenting life, because it is a challenging life. And also, like you said, it is when women come together and support each other, you can make a difference. You can really feel the power of it. And I was supported as well, but at the same time, I saw how much women out there are not. So that was really the drive also for me to focus on bringing Mamamoon, bringing that care, creating that app, the Mamamoon app, so really spreading it to as many women out there.
So tell me about you as a person. What kind of person are you? As a woman?
So some people say that I'm stubborn. Some people say that I'm a little bit crazy. I think it's kind of like a mix of perseverance and a bit of crazy that actually makes you going for it. When I realized that many times in life, when I put my head in something and you go for it, you reach it, but you need to know what it is. And the same as when my daughter was born, and I felt like, okay, you know what, I was actually made for that. The same when I stepped on a yoga mat, I felt like, oh my God, like love from the first sight. It was also when I started working on Mamamoon now, was that fits, you know, this is it, it works, and you go for it. And sometimes it's a roller coaster of emotions, of everything. But as long as you know what's the goal, what is driving you, what is it that you're after, I go for it.
I love that mix of sort of crazy and determined. I think it works really well. So in the past, I think storytelling has been sort of a vital part of how we've passed information from generation to generation. And part of womanship is a feeling that we need to share more of our personal stories to help women see the challenges and hurdles that they can get over. So can you share a personal story or a challenge that you faced that's made you the person that you are today?
I think the challenge was a little bit of the contradiction that was always in me. So really wanting to have a family, wanting to set up the family, having kids, at the same time being scared of giving birth, but also of the change that comes with it. To give you an example, when I was a kid, once I found out how the babies are born, I actually, after being completely shocked and like terrified of the whole thing, because I found out from my mom, and that was not a pretty story. I actually told myself at that time, you know what, like, don't worry, like you're small now. By the time you grow up, the science will come up with something that, you know, the boys will deliver babies.
I love that.
So that didn't happen. That was kind of like postponed. And there was a moment when there was a movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger Jr. when he was pregnant, and that gave me a little bit of a hope. Nothing came out of it. But yeah, that was also the reason I realized when I was always postponing. So I was already in a relationship, and we wanted to have kids, and we wanted to have a family, and I was postponing and postponing and postponing because, first of all, I was scared of giving birth, and the second, I also was scared of the change. Because it's your whole life, you're independent, you do what you want when you want. You know, I wanted to go and work in Singapore, so I packed my bag and I went. I wanted to spend summer in Ireland waitressing, so I packed my bag and I went. And then suddenly, you know, like you have this human being that you're responsible for, and it's not just you anymore. So I was scared. And it was a challenge in a sense which shaped me the way that I am today, because once we faced it, we decided, okay, you know, we go for it. And we were lucky to actually have that, you know, little bundle of joy. I was shocked how okay it can be.
So was it as big a change as you thought it was going to be?
It was huge. It was huge. You have to think about, I moved out of the house of my parents when I was 19, and I went studies, I was on my own, and then I would, you know, kind of get my money by waitressing and this and that and traveling on the summers so it was kind of doing my own thing. And then suddenly when you have a kid, and I'm not even talking about the physical changes that you have in the body, but the mental shift, Jesus Christ. And it's also the mix of, nobody talks about it. So it's the hormones, it's the physical, but it's the hormones, it's the expectations, and it's we are not really like reasonable people when we just had a baby. And it was only when I met one of my colleagues, she already, her kids were older, and we went for lunch, and she said that, you know, like there was this moment when I had this group of girlfriends and we would come together, and one time we all felt really shit, so we started sharing the real stories. And at that time, I realized that, oh, wait a second. So we all been through that. So I was not a bad mother. I was not a bad wife. I was not a bad daughter, not a bad sister. It's just like everybody has it.
Mm.
It was amazing. It was exactly actually when, it was exactly what, what you are bringing with the share more or less with the womanship. It's so needed. For me, that lunch talk was a game changer, because I realized that my Lily was at that time 6 months, and I was going through so many mental shifts in my head. And suddenly I felt like, oh, okay, so that's normal. So it was a big change. And also when I work with my students now, they come to me because they are scared of giving birth. So that's the trigger, because they want to prepare for giving birth. But in every way I can, I try to prepare them also for what is after, because it's something we don't want to talk about or think about first.
So why do you think it is that as women, we don't talk about this, and we don't talk about the details of giving birth and the difficulties or the challenges that come with it from hormonal changes and everything else surrounding that?
I think that, so you kind of can separate it a little bit, like the part of giving birth. Very often we see so much the negative stories on TV, in the shows, and it's always, if you were watching that series of Friends, and with Rachel, and screaming hands in the air and the legs in the air, and a lot of noise and vocals, and that's the image that we have in our heads, that birth is brutal, and it's it's a lot of pain. And so majority of the stories that I hear from my students are the opposite. It's not that they are all pretty and that you're in the water under the tree and having orgasmic birth. No. Kind of like manage expectations. But it's more about the power, the strength, the calmness, the feeling of like that superhero kind of feeling. And I found myself not talking about it for a long time when Lily was born, simply because if I would be sitting next to friends who also gave birth, once you hear someone's story, which is not a pretty one, and yours is actually good, then you feel like, oh, shoot, let me just say that it was fine, instead of going into the reality of it, because you don't want to hurt someone's feelings, because for them it was a big trauma or a lot of, and that was for a lot of women out there. So you kind of stay quiet, and that's why I always encourage my students to either share it, either writing it down for themselves, or if they are okay, to also throw it on the blog, that we also share it out there, that we kind of change the way that people perceive how the birth can be. Because once you realize it, then you feel like, oh, you know what, I'm actually looking forward to it. Because it's pretty cool, like
it's amazing.
I mean, when Lily was born, and I was like, Jesus Christ, if I found this, I can do anything, like so it's like taking away this from women. That's just not okay. And that's also what made me sad. Why we are not talking about what comes after? Sometimes it's tough. And I think that's also that part about the postpartum depression that kicks in, the birth trauma. So it's not always easy for us. It's not being checked well. So if I can only talk for the Netherlands, we have a checkup at 6 weeks here, which is mostly focused on the baby. So how the baby is growing, how the baby is doing. We are being asked how the baby is sleeping, and if the baby, are we breastfeeding or bottle, if we are breastfeeding left boob or right boob or both. and there's, are you feeling okay, or do you feel sometimes sad? And that's it.
So they're not really asking the questions to help women.
No. And it's also the moment that it depends also on different countries. So there's some countries in UK, for example, where that kind of support system is a little bit better organized for women after they gave birth. In the Netherlands, it's not there. So you need to kind of organize yourself. But in many other countries, it's not there. to be honest. So it's just coming out of us, and it's also coming from the fact, also like you, I think, shared before, we used to have this storytelling before. So before we would have the mom, the sister, the aunt, the friend, sitting next to us, sharing all of it, taking care of us, and kind of normalizing everything that we are going through. But now it's not there anymore. So maybe someone's mom or aunt comes, or sister, and helps for a week, for two. But
we've lost that support system that we used to have. You mentioned the differences between, for example, the UK and the Netherlands. What do you see as the biggest similarities and differences between, I guess, the narrative of different countries when it comes to pregnancy and birth?
There's some countries which, majority of the countries, birth is very medicalized. So that's still the case. And whether it's US, France, Italy, Spain. So in Amsterdam, I have a chance to work with people from different countries. And very often they come to me also with a second one. So having first one in France or in Spain or in US. So then I hear a little bit how that looks like there. Yeah. And it's quite similar also to where I grew up in Poland. So very medicalized, very much driven by the medical system, by the checkpoints. So when you are going through the checkpoints in pregnancy, nobody is asking you like, how do you feel mentally? Or it's like all the blood pressure and the test, and the baby growth. And so not so much focus on the actually mental well-being of women who are going through pretty big change.
Huge change.
Yeah. And it's in the Netherlands, it's when it comes to birth, we have all the options on the table. And that's something which I never felt pushed in any direction. It also changed what I understand from the system, that in the past, the Dutch system was pushing more into the natural home birth. Now, nobody's pushing anyone. All the options are on the table. So if you are lucky enough that you have a happy, healthy pregnancy, you can go for the home birth, you can do that. If you feel hospital is the safest place, I want to give birth, then you do that. But that was the biggest difference that I found between the Netherlands and Poland or other countries I came across. And that was something which I thought it's not so difficult to bridge that gap, because it's not that you have to change the whole system. It's more about starting with bringing that awareness to people. So really, if you go, the amount of information out there, it's just overwhelming. You become pregnant and you go on Google and then
there's so much information. And I did research, and women, 40% of women feel overwhelmed when they search for a result, because it's who do you believe, who do you trust?
Yeah.
And there's so many different options, as you say, from the natural to the medicalized. So I think it must be very difficult for women to actually make that decision.
Absolutely.
And also it feels like there's, I don't know whether to call it competition, or a lot of women feel like they're failing. For example, if their birth plan doesn't go according to plan, or if, their baby doesn't take to breastfeeding, or if they feel postpartum depression. What are your views on women and why we create this tension and stress for each other when every journey surely is individual?
It's part of it is social media, but part of it is also the system. So it's depending in different countries. So for example, breastfeeding is now, there's a big push on breastfeeding, and because it's healthy, because it's natural, because it's so much better. And it's beautiful, but it can also be tough. And it's at the same time also when you go, on Instagram, I mean, everything is pretty. And so if you don't fit in the pretty, like I'm doing something wrong, And it's also something which I've learned through trainings. It takes between 6 seconds and 6 months to bond with your baby. So that, and it's both, by the way, is perfectly normal. So some women, babies born, and you have rainbows and unicorns and everything in the room, and some of us not. But when my daughter was born, I was, I looked at her, I thought like, I was expecting you to have black hair like mine, and you're like almost bald and blonde, and the skin looks like the copy of your father. And why? You were in my belly for 9 months, and I couldn't eat everything. I couldn't drink everything. I couldn't have fun. And like, why the hell do you look like my husband? Those were literally my first thoughts when my daughter was born. But I mean, I love her to death.
But women don't talk about these things. And I don't think, as you said, we're shown this pretty picture of things and all the beautiful images, but it's not until we start talking about the realities. I didn't know that it can take up to 6 months for women to bond. And I know friends who've gone through postpartum depression, even though they didn't talk about it at the time. And I'm certain now they were probably experiencing that and the expectation that you're automatically meant to be this amazing mother who knows how to do everything, and the world is, as you said, unicorns and rainbows, and actually that's not the reality. So again, talking about it for me like this is really important, so women see how much they can be individual on their journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I used to do, and that was beautiful, so COVID was COVID, but it also had its blessings. And when I wanted to stay connected with my students, I would do the kind of mama chat and chai. So we would go on Zoom and once a month kind of get together and it was beautiful. Sometimes there were like 20, 30, 35 women, and just sharing a little bit, depending who was there. Sometimes was the birth story, sometimes was the postpartum, sometimes parenting, toddlers, in the background, trashing the whole room. That was beautiful. It was kind of zooming in other moms' living rooms and just seeing the mess. Oh yeah, my mess. I also have a mess. Oh, that's fine. So I can have a mess, like, oh, cool, And it's normalizing it. It's a huge thing. And with parenting, there's if you think about it, there are schools to teach us how to be, I don't know, architects or marketing managers or, business owners, but there's not a single school that can prepare you for being a parent.
It's amazing when you think about it like that. It really is.
Yeah. And it's a huge, so recently one of the beauty also of that community that we started building with Mamamoon is that we learn from each other.
Yes.
So there's a lot of, usually I have to say it's women. So there's a lot of women who after, for some reason, whether it was birth or just the experience being close to it, they either change the career or refocus. And recently I had a chance to join a parenting course that one of them, she just also from one moment to another, she trained in aware parenting. And then, started sharing it with other parents because it helped her so much.
Yes.
With her daughter. So and the amount of goodness I took out of this course is unbelievable. And my kids are already almost 4, almost 7, like if I knew that before, but it's the expectations is, I was always told, go make babies are cute. Yeah, they are cute, but damn it, you have to take care of them, So I have 2, and people are asking, are you going to have a 3rd one? I'm like, no, 2 is all I can manage. They're cute, but come on, they're not going anywhere. They ask you stuff, they ask for attention, and it's intense.
Yep. And we're not taught how to deal with that. I know, even looking after my nieces and nephews, and I was exhausted. I remember the first time when I was sort of left alone with my 3 nephews, and they're all boys, 2 years apart. And it was like, my gosh, I have so much admiration for my sister, especially, obviously her partner, in terms of being able to cope with that, because we don't talk about how difficult it is and can be. I have a friend of mine who will turn around, many years ago when her children were smaller, and she would turn around and say, I fucking hate my kids, Nick. And she'd say, I can say that to you because I don't hate my kids. But if I say it to the mums at school, there's this criticism, or to other friends who've got kids, that I shouldn't be speaking like that. So, I think women hold so much back from the realities of what life is like. And then we make it difficult because everybody thinks they have to achieve those same standards.
Yeah.
So how did the births of your children, Lily and Miko,
Yeah.
how did they differ?
Lily was like a surprise. because I didn't know what to expect. She was my first one, and I was expecting, I was hoping for it to be okay. I was actually came to the point where I was curious. So I kind of, with yoga, with hypnobirthing, I was not dreading that moment. I was more like curious, how is it going to be? How am I going to experience it? So when it started, I didn't lock it in a way, I just let it go. But it was intense, and it was kind of like, it was intense. So in many ways, not just physical, but just, I think, just the whole thing, that mental processing of the fact that there's like a human being getting out of it.
I mean, it's the first time. It's the first time you experience something like that.
Yeah, no. So it was really, with Miko, I was so relaxed. Jesus Christ, it was. But it was also pretty special. So with Lily, I didn't know what to expect. So we went to the birth center, which was kind of like in between a home and the hospital solution. And with Miko, we're like, okay, you know what, we can stay home. If we're allowed to stay home, let's just stay home, because when we were going with Lily, then my husband, he like literally forgot everything, like the bag and the maxi clothing, his phone, like literally everything. So, when
like,
he said,
you had one job to do, come on, I'm doing all the hard work.
Yeah. So then when the midwife asked, like, hey, would you consider a home birth? And I was like, yeah, well, actually, why not? And then he's like, oh, thank God. Then I'm not going to forget this stuff. So with Mika, I was already, first of all, I was not scared of birth, because I've been there, and I was already teaching a lot hypnobirthing and yoga and all the birth preparation courses. And that was even a bit nerdy when I was giving birth to him. I was like, oh yeah, I need to be in this position to make it easier,
Nice.
So it was kind of like, yeah. But at the same time, and when he was born, and by the way, it was the same thing. There was no unicorns, no rainbows, Like, I was on hands and knees. So then the midwife picked him up, received him on the back, and she's like, Kasia, if you turn around, you can see him. I'm like, I'm fine.
You want me to turn around now?
Yeah. No, I was actually like, do you want to hold him? No, I'm good. If you turn around, you can see him. I'm fine. It's like, and then I only ask him, does he have black hair? He's like, yes. Okay, then it's good. I don't know if you've seen the picture of my son, but
Yeah.
he's like literally white Dutch hair kid. It's just not fair. Yeah.
I'm certain he's got your determination and drive in there.
Yeah, but like I said, 2 is all I can manage. So I was not as determined to have, like a dark hair kid like me, So we stopped at 2. There's not going to be number 3, but like, yeah. No, so it was way more. It was relaxed, it was fun. It was July, and a friend of mine, she was doing also the certification for doula. So she came in. She was playing with Lily when we were taking care of Miko, so they used the pool, because I never made it to the pool. It was kind of quick. So they were using it was, the pool as a swimming pool,
Really?
So it was way more super relaxed, very easygoing, a bit like, chit-chatting. And a few days later, I was up and going. So it was very, I was also not shocked by all the changes, like before, all the hormones and the fact that, it's like day 3, 4, 5, you sit there, you cry for no reason. And you don't know why, right? Because you are okay, and the baby's okay, and your husband is okay, and everything is okay. So why the hell am I crying? Like, am I a bad mother now? Because, I'm not grateful
that everything is good. Yes.
So I was crying, but I was not feeling guilty for crying this time.
So tell me a little bit about the journey you're on with Mamamoon. What led to the path that you're currently on? And I guess, what was your aha moment to follow your passion?
It was when Lily was born, my first feeling was that if I can do that, I can do anything. And it was also at the same time like, why the hell did I wait it? I could have had her earlier, like I didn't have to wait so long. I would have had a bit more energy. So, and it's so that was first was, that shock part. And then I became a bit sad, because I thought, well, I was lucky in a sense to have this experience, because I'm in the Netherlands, where all the options are on the table. And why do you need to live here to have access to all that knowledge, to be supported in those decisions? If you want to have that natural birth, to be supported, to be educated on how you can support yourself, and why do you need to speak English to have access to it? Because again, all of it is on Google. So if you go there, there's books, Google has everything, but in many cases, when it comes to the actual books or trainings, it's a lot of it is in English. And in the country like where I'm from, in Poland, not everybody speaks English yet.
Yes.
So it was a little bit that sadness part. And it was, that was the part when I decided to learn more about it, to be able to help more. So I was already teaching yoga, but then going more into prenatal yoga, hypnobirthing, and first experimenting a little bit, on the one-on-ones, private sessions, so not yet, jumping into it.
Right.
I got pregnant with Nico. At that time, I was working full-time in corporate, and I had a toddler at home, and I was pregnant with Nico. I was teaching yoga on Wednesday evening, and I was teaching private hypnobirthing on the weekends. And then I felt like, okay, wait a second. And I wasn't tired, by the way, coming back from the yoga class, especially when you are pregnant and you work with pregnant women, it's awesome. It's like that kind of community, right?
Yes.
You feel, and you can actually say I feel like shit today.
The support that we can give each other is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was beautiful. I had the support of my students. I had the support of the other birth professionals. I knew that if I need them, I know whom to call. So it was a completely different experience. And it was also very clear to me that the moment that Nico is born, something has to go away, right? I mean, there's 24 hours in a day and 7 days a week. And, I already made him, so it's not like I'm going to ditch him, right?
A baby's for life, as they say.
Yeah. So, and it's, I could kid myself and think that I maybe will teach less of yoga and hypnobirthing, but I got so much energy out of it so that was a bit the moment for me. First of all, finding myself in a pretty extreme situation and yet having that drive to do it. And the second thing was also that shift, because with Miko, I also noticed the support system. And that was something that I was missing with Lilia. With Lilia, I wanted to do all of it by myself. Right. And I did it, but it was hard as hell. And with him, I was, you want to do it? You want to cook for me? Cook for me. You do the shopping, that's fine. Oh, you want to take Lily for afternoon? Please do, So it's kind of like accepting help as well and knowing whom to reach out. And that was when that combination of let's give you the knowledge so you are prepared for what's coming when it comes to birth and postpartum and parenting, and that give you support so you don't feel alone. That was the drive, which was super important for me to share with others, because it's a game changer. It's a game changer.
I can imagine. So tell us more about the Mamamoon app and how it helps women on their pregnancy, birth, and postpartum journeys.
Well, Mamamoon app is if you've done Duolingo, I hate to say it, but it's easy to explain this way. If you've ever used Duolingo to learn another language, we basically created a Duolingo for birth preparation. So we created a program with relevant information for you today that actually can have impact on the birth and the postpartum recovery. So we don't talk about, the baby being the size of a raspberry or lemon or whatever. Never helps anybody. But we talk about, hey, you are in the first trimester. Probably you may be stressed or nervous because you don't know yet how it's going to be. How about you do this breathing practice? But then we give them breathing practice that's the same breathing that you can use when you give birth. So this way they have 9 months of possibility to practice breath. That, by the way, was it's always in the top 3 of tools when I talk to the students. There's a moment in pregnancy when we would like the baby to go head down. Women are not aware of it. So very often they are faced with information too late at 36 weeks, like, oh, by the way, your baby is still head up. And then it's a C-section, which is fine, but it's it's kind of like, or not always a C-section, but it's usually medically advised to do it because of the other risks. And I'm not simplifying a lot of things, but there are moments in pregnancy where you can simply, if you know that they are important, you can actually make a difference, but you have to know about it. So we want to bring that awareness to them. And at the same time, we want to make it fun, because everybody knows that eating salad is good for you. Drinking water is good for you, right? Meditating is good for you. But do you do that?
Not as much as we should.
No, right? So once I realized, because I was also actually a little bit thanks to COVID, I got a chance to work with people in all sorts of different ways, right? Sometimes I had those 5 weeks courses, sometimes I had half a day course. And that's the only time that I had a chance to see someone. And honestly, it doesn't matter as long as I find that way to hook them in.
Right.
So that's the behavior change bit. So that's the Duolingo twist that we put on Mamamoon app to make them come back and actually do what serves them, do what serves the baby, not bringing it through the fear, but rather making them feel the benefit of it. Because once you feel the benefit, oh yeah, if I do that, that actually helps me, right? I feel better, or whether it's physically or mentally. And so that also helps me to have smoother birth. Oh, that's pretty cool.
Really cool. It's really cool.
So that was the twist that we did. And we focus on the full pregnancy and then the first 16 weeks of postpartum. So not just the pregnancy part, but also giving support in the first weeks after. We tested it with the mamas. We're a little bit afraid that the postpartum mamas will be, that we lose them, but actually those were the most engaged. So the ones who were giving us the most feedback, the ones who were asking the most questions, who wanted more. So that also gave us confidence. Okay, so this is needed. And we've created a program for the mom, but also the program for the partner, which is different program, but the same goal. So that the experience of pregnancy, birth, and postpartum is easier on the mother. So mother is really in the focus. And the partner can be a partner, but can also be a sister, can be a mother, can be, a doula, midwife, whoever you feel that you want to be supported by. And that's the program that we are now bringing to life. So that's why it's I'm super passionate about it also, because it brings a lot of elements together. The whole program was built together with the experts that I've been working for the last years. So the sleep coaching is written by a sleep coach. The pelvic floor exercises have been designed by the pelvic floor therapist. So really, like, all those bits were put together by different specialists who identify those elements as like, okay, this is what have been serving my clients the most during that period. So focusing on that. And if you like to dive deeper on any of those topics, then we give you also guidance where. So it's bringing at least the minimum that can make a difference and letting you know where you can find more, because we also don't want to overwhelm. So it's,
yes, of course.
Yeah.
And do you have access to the professionals or the experts when you're inside the app?
So not directly, but you can win it as a reward. So what we do actually with our moms in the program is that they by following through the program, following through some of the exercises, or sometimes it's just making themselves aware about the topic, they collect the points, which are the unicorn points. And then when you have a certain amount of points, you can select your reward. And that can be either a video class, but can also be a one-on-one with a professional. And when we start, because we had to start small, so those professionals, if anyone is also looking for someone who is maybe not directly shared, they can always reach out to us. So also with all the articles, if within the reward there is not a pelvic floor therapist, for example, but all the articles that have been written by those professionals, we always give details where you can find them.
Really nice.
So that's, if you want to contact them, you know where to find them. And that was also important for us, to give them that feeling, that security. And again, we had to start somewhere. So maybe tomorrow, in a year, we grow differently in that direction. But at least for now, it felt like, okay, you have the knowledge, you have the access, you know where to find them.
So what's the feedback been from the testers so far?
But they loved it. They were so sweet. They were even recently, so during the campaign, because many of them, they actually supported us during the crowdfunding campaign, saying, and we've shared the program with them in a very basic way of like sending the program manually with the Google Sheet forms and sending the rewards manually connecting them. So, the feedback was actually, I wish I was pregnant again. There was a mom, I think it was her second or the third one. She's like, I'm not planning to be pregnant anymore, but I know that I would definitely use it because if that was so helpful. So it was, they were actually actively asking also either for the rewards or for the next week program. So it was, you could feel, and sometimes they stayed quiet. So sometimes there was a moment, I think in January when we were finishing off the testing phase. Also because again, the team is small, so we have to refocus, and we started building the real thing. But I felt bad. I was like, okay, like if you, we need to do that, but then we can still accommodate 10 mamas to share that program going forward. And it was within the day I had the 10 email addresses. And the beauty was also that I got those emails from some that they never, gave any feedback, or they never asked question over the time. And were like, no, I know I was quiet, I'm sorry, but I was really following it. So it was really, confirming also. And they helped us create it as well, because when we've been testing it, we always ask them, either, so also to rate that week. So, like how would you rate it from 1 to 10? But also, what would you like to learn next? So from that, we've seen mostly 8, 9, or 10. So like, okay, good. If there was a 7, I was like, okay, what happened? And maybe there was like a nutrition recipe, or something. Or like, oh yeah, we need to differentiate. Okay, next time, but fine. And then there was also, when we asked them, what would you like to learn next? We actually were doing our best to incorporate it in the program as well. So they were testing with us, but they were, without knowing, building it with us as well.
So what's been your biggest lows and biggest highs so far on this journey as an entrepreneur?
Like this week or last month?
I know that feeling so well. Every day throws up different challenges.
I think about the journey right now with the Mamamoon app started in this shape. So really going for the Mamamoon app, it started a year ago. So, but I think the biggest down was when I lost my co-founder.
Okay.
And there was, it was not so much that, oh, we were so close to do it here. It was more because I really liked working with her. So it was, but she had to protect herself. She had a little baby, and it's there are things important, but there are things which are more important. But of course, it felt at that time as something like, oh shit, like, so you are on your own again, and also like having that kind of sparring partner that is with you. It's different. So that was a bit tough, also because in the past I also lost one co-founder as well. So it's a little bit like like a marriage thing, right? So, but in the end, we also managed to turn it around, because once I was on my own, I also knew, like, okay, now so you either do it or you don't, and you know that you will. So
yes, that determination coming back again. I love that.
That's actually when I managed to attract a co-founder who is also an investor, he has a technical company that's building the apps. So we had that period, the trial period of working together for a couple of weeks and to see how it goes. We did it under NDA, so it was everything kind of like, like a proper, I don't know, date. I don't know. I always have to think about, like all sorts of dating systems, whatever. but it felt good. It really felt good from the start. And he also was attracted to the idea, not even so much from, not only because of the idea itself and what it can bring, but also from his personal story of wife who was going through postpartum depression.
Wow.
So he knew, like, okay, I know that this is a problem. I know there is not enough service out there. I know that the help is needed. So, and then the way that you came up with it, it's engaging and it's simple and I can do it. And so that was when we nicely turned it around. But that was not the high. The high was actually what I mentioned also to you now about the students, because there's nothing more rewarding when you receive something that you've been working on for so long, which is your baby, and then you get this like encouraging feedback from students who are basically saying, yes, go for it, it's such a huge help, it was such a big game changer for me, and it helped me so much, and so please continue so that other women can also benefit from it. And that was throughout the testing period, but it also came now really strongly with a campaign as well. That's really beautiful when I see that they are coming back this way, so yeah.
So that's beautiful, and I love the fact that you're seeing that traction now and getting the support. So I think as women we can often find it hard to ask for help, but as you say, when we support each other, there's a magic that happens. In your mission, I know, as you put it, to get women to feel like superheroes before, during, and after birth. So what's the next step for Mamamoon, and how can we help you?
Well, we are almost there. So it's like so close, like you can almost touch it. So there's a couple of things, because we launched this campaign to get that last bit, and it's, if I'm being completely blunt, majority of that goes to quality assurance. So making sure, because we are not a medical app, so we also have to make sure that we don't give an impression to anyone that we give any advice.
Yes.
And that's important, because we are not going to replace a midwife. We're not going to give, like, it's important for us as well. So we're almost there. So that campaign is one thing where we are looking for support, and it's an all or nothing campaign. So we either get to the full amount or we don't get any funding. And so that's the big milestone for us. And there's so many beautiful rewards of all the experts out there. So just make benefit out of it. There's also mindfulness, Ayurveda, nutrition. You don't have to be pregnant to use it, like.
I love this.
So it's really beautiful, beautiful, beautiful stuff. So really sharing it, and that helps a lot, and sharing it with people who can either benefit from it, or people who can also understand what we've been going through. That part of life, of women's life, being pregnancy, birth, postpartum, is important enough to invest more in it. Yeah. Because throughout this whole journey, I was always challenged by investors about the lifetime value of a customer. You only target women and they have to be pregnant, and it's just, like 9 months, and how many kids they may have, 1, 2. I'm like, Jesus Christ, is this the reason that you will never invest in pregnancy? Half the population out there is women.
It's amazing. I mean, I hear this so often when I talk about anything to do with medical research or menopause or anything like that, how little research has been done, and how often male investors don't see these as important issues, because women have always just got on and done these things. We've always got through. So I think it's really important that, women come behind you and support this, because this is for us and making our lives better.
Yeah.
And we can find the crowdfunding through your website, which is mamamoon.me.
So we have 2 websites now. It can be mamamoon.me, and that's where you'll find crowdfunding. You can also find the latest of the latest, actually, from the Instagram account, because there we also do a lot of Instagram lives with the experts. So if you want to dive deeper, recently we did, I think, sleep coaching, also the pelvic floor therapy. So different topics, you can always dive there as well. Campaign is finishing the 30th of July. Okay, so that's the last day. That's the important one, that, like, closer one. So we have another 3 weeks, 20 days. So the pressure is on.
So we've got to get our support in quickly because, yeah, I mean, this is so worth supporting. So, so something a little different.
Yeah.
So I love quotes. I think they, you know, we learn so much from them. They can be so poignant. Do you have a favorite quote that you can share with us and let us know why you think it's important?
I read this quote and that stuck with me. Want to change the world? You have to change the way that babies are born.
Perfect.
And that was really something that stuck with me for the last year, that it's bigger than that. If you feel about changing birth, it's for the women, but it's also for the babies. And when you have that first contact with the world, which is more calm, more supported,
it stands to reason that everything is going to be better for both, you know, and they say, you know, when you have a happy mother, you have a happy baby. So yeah, it's definitely something that we need to focus on. Okay, and as this is a Truthcast, do you have anything or a question you'd like to ask me?
I do. And that's also coming a little bit from my background as from hypnobirthing. In hypnobirthing, you have those like affirmations. In yoga, you have the mantras. Do you have any mantra, anything, any words, favorite words or sentences, something that just drives you through every day?
I think there's a description that I use about myself very often. And I say that I am a midlife woman with a 100% record of getting through bad days. Because I think it's very rarely that we look back, and we've all faced so many challenges that when we were approaching them, we thought we would never get through. And yet the fact that we're here shows that we have 100% record of getting through things. So whenever I feel challenged on my entrepreneurial journey or with anything else, I still sit there and say to myself, Nick, you've got this. You've got a 100% record. Come on, you can do this. So yeah, that's the mantra that I use a lot about myself, and it really does help me when I'm down.
I may borrow it.
Of course, please do. You may have to lose the midlife bit, but you know, I even say that you can lose the woman bit as well, depending on who you're listening. You just have this 100% record. So so yeah, welcome to the 100% club.
Super, thank you.
So final question for you. And this is something that I've been asking a lot of women, and it's, what does womanship mean to you?
Womanship, it means for me support. It actually comes with that support. It's normalizing, it's being honest, raw. And there was another quote, by the way, that I came across a few weeks ago, that amazing things happen when women support other women. And I saw it, I'm like, oh my God, this is it. That should have been, you know, Nicolette.
Thank you. It's amazing. It's a word that's not in the dictionary, and I love the way that you described it, because yeah, it amazes me that every woman has a slightly different interpretation of it, like yours, which is beautiful, but they all tend to mean the same thing of coming together, of support. So so thank you for that. Thank you very much for joining us, Kasia. It was great that you shared so openly a bit about yourself and the journey that you've gone on. And we really do wish you the best with Mamamoon. As I said, everyone can find out more about the Mamamoon crowdfunding on her website at mamamoon.me, and also on Instagram. And remember that you can also follow Womanship on Instagram or LinkedIn to be the first to know when our Share More, Worry Less platform will go live. So thank you for joining us, and thanks again.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Nicolette. Thanks.